afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Today we're talking to a woman named Amber Gamblng, who is a mathematician, a sports bettor, former blackjack dealer, and a bunch of other things. Amber Gamblng, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us how you got into the gambling world.
Oh, this is an interesting story. I'm actually originally from the Midwest, and I procured an internship when I was about 19 years old in Lake Tahoe with my college. I moved up there with about $400 and a car and went to work at Harvey's, which is now, I guess, under the Caesars, back in the mid 90s. And
now, wait, you couldn't work in the casino at 19, right?
Not yet. So I actually worked in the cafeteria for about a year and a half, and I tried out for the dealer school before I turned 21, got in, and I turned 21 on the blackjack floor that night. That's how I celebrated my 21st birthday. So,
wow. And how long did you deal?
I dealt for about 3 years, basically just saving for college and going on a lot of little adventures around the area. And then from then I returned back to school, got my degree, and kind of kept going. So, yeah.
So while you were dealing blackjack, did you have any desire to play or to learn to play?
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you back in those days, pretty much anyone who was on the full-time roster, we all played blackjack too, because it's just natural going along with the job. But we weren't allowed to play in the casino that we worked, and we were discouraged from going across the street to Harrah's. So a lot of the times we'd hop in the car together and go down to Reno to play. So,
and did you, with a math background, I mean, you were studying math, right? So I would think that would naturally lead you toward counting cards.
Yes. And it's funny that you say this, because really I feel like my math acumen really came from the casino, and it really opened up a lot of doors for me to be able to just move that quickly, doing addition, subtraction in your head, looking at the cards, getting a feel for the flow. So it really kind of pushed me towards a math type degree. And my degree is in accounting, with an emphasis in accounting research and finance. So, and now I've jumped into the foray of data analytics, and that's just personal study on my part. So,
what analytics?
Data analytics. Yeah.
Oh, data analytics. Okay.
Yes.
So, go ahead.
So you go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
Well, okay, still at Harvey's. Moving to Lake Tahoe with $400 in your back pocket doesn't seem like a large amount to go to Lake Tahoe with. That's it's an expensive place to live, I would think. Shows a certain amount of daring. When you were on the a blackjack dealer, what were you nervous about getting fired? Because still didn't have a lot of money and stuff. And what scared you the most as a blackjack dealer?
Oh, well, let me tell you, there's a lot of things, especially back then. For one thing, it was really important. And as a young person, I kind of learned this lesson the hard way. You need to save when you're high tips and when you have a good weekend. So I had one weekend where I went out and spent a bunch of money and barely made rent the next month. And it was a little dicey. The other thing is they were strict about certain things. As you would imagine, a casino doesn't like to lose. So if you had a really bad losing night or dump your tray, they would put you on the big six for a couple of days. That is literally the most boring game in the entire casino. So, yeah.
They did that to me only one time, and they noticed that I kept getting very close to hitting the 40 to 1 because I was practicing immediately at hitting, the number I wanted, and they never put me back there again. So, now, did you keep your own tips at Harvey's? Or
we had just, and unfortunately, this is tough. We had just switched to the pool system. So, and of course, I worked the busiest part, which was the swing shift. So I didn't get as much benefit from my tips, but I was just glad to be there at that young age. So I was pretty grateful for what I got. Coming up now, 65.
Harvey's was a gold mine for us in the 90s. And that was almost all single deck back then. So what was the casino's attitude toward card counters? What did they tell you, or did they train you at all in that regard? Okay,
so a lot of my training back then came from older dealers, and one of the neatest things about Harvey's is it's kind of a lifestyle. So you're on the lake, the ski resorts. A lot of people just moved there and stayed there. And they would bring us up and they would be like, okay, if you have someone and you're not sure, start shuffling after every hand, or, pick them up really fast or deal fast, which I think for an advantage gambler is actually kind of something they would want to see as a fast dealer. But we didn't think about it like that back then. And we would try to deal fast, so fast that they couldn't keep the count. But a lot of things, mainly shuffle up, pick up cards.
So they really didn't know anything.
No, not really. We never got training on advantage gamblers other than if someone starts winning hard, start shuffling a lot and differently and change it up. So
change your shuffle. Yeah. Yep. I experienced that one too.
Yep. We probably saw each other. Honestly, I've been wondering, maybe you were on my table at one point.
Oh, it's certainly possible. I played a lot in Lake Tahoe in the 90s. So,
So you got away from Lake Tahoe, blackjack. What was your next foray into gambling-related subjects?
Well, one of the things, most recently, I went to college, finished up. I went all the way, so to speak, on college and got a terminal degree. And back, I would say, just like anybody else, I went to Las Vegas. I learned how to play video poker. Mainly my goal was to just not make mistakes. I learned basic strategy. I did a little bit of counting. One of my biggest challenges was sitting still for that long and also not forgetting the count. That is also incredibly challenging. I think that's probably the hardest thing about counting. I didn't feel like I was as strong as I should be to take it into a direction that would be more of a career path. So I kind of kept it recreational. And then an exciting thing happened in 2020 when everybody was staying home. I started just, under my own study, picking up data science as something of interest to me that I could also give back to my educational community. And so my interest in data science really led me to some interesting people on Twitter who I became friends with. And I ended up over at Analytics.bet taking courses. And from there, it just led me into the sports betting community. So that's kind of how I made the transition. And it's been an exciting and interesting ride as a beginning, or I guess I should say a newer sports bettor.
So you decided to get into sports betting. You're studying the data analytics and you decide to get into sports betting. How did you start? What did you do?
Well, okay. So when I lived in Florida, I was an event director and I had my own business on top of my day job. And one of the things that I did is I put on these big events at hotels, and I ran into another conference director who was putting on mixed martial arts fights. So when I got done, I would skedaddle on over and watch. And I kind of got a feel for the sport. It is different. It's a little bit passionate. It's a little bit violent, but I started watching him and I picked up a little bit of knowledge about that. And then fast forward to 2020, I found that obtaining the data on UFC and MMA was wholly available on the internet. So I basically went out, I was watching videos, I was talking to people. I met one of your past hosts, Plus EV Analytics on Twitter, just by accident. I think we were on 5:30. I was responding to a 538 post and I saw one of his responses and we just sort of became Twitter friends. And so I started kind of looking at the data and I went down to a casino. They had just opened up a brand new sportsbook where I live. And I basically bet out a card on MMA. And you know how you have that beginner luck? Yeah, that happened to me. It happened to me in a great way. And
which, yeah, for many people, that's the worst thing that can happen is to win their first big bet. But I'm curious when you say the data on MMA. Now, I don't know anything about the data on MMA, but other than like the win-loss record and the weight of the fighter, like what other data do they keep track of?
Oh, there's a lot. There are several websites that you can go to, and I'm more than willing to share. There for someone who is interested in this, you can go to UFCstats.com, fightmatrix.com, tapology.com. I go to wikipedia.com, and you can get a record on all their fights. Also, you can go in and a lot of times I'll pull an MMA podcast, and some of them are really long, like 2-3 hours. Maybe you don't have that kind of time to sit and invest. So I simply send it to transcript and then just do a word cloud or a data search on anything that I'm looking for. And yeah, there is so much data out in MMA. You can follow them. I follow them on Instagram and Twitter and all the social medias. And then one of the things I try to do is look at their record prior to them coming into MMA. I go in and look for health records if I can find them. I mean, I really dig deep. In my handicapping of MMA. All of it is information. So yeah.
Now, one of the guests we're having on in the near future says that when you're starting out in sports betting, you should go to a really strong book like Pinnacle and find the sports where they'll only take a $50 or $100 bet because those are the sports that nobody knows what's going on, and that's why they won't take much action. Is there a lot of action to be had at MMA? Can you get a lot of money down?
You can get quite a bit of money down. The books that I find, Circa is the one. Yeah, and they post their limits. Now
Circa won't bar anybody.
Circa won't bar.
Yeah,
and they are sharp. Am I okay to say that? Is that okay?
Yeah. Can you say they're sharp? Yes, you can say they're sharp.
In fact, so sharp that when I was in Circa a while back and I was just trying to get something in, and if you go up to the top and walk down the stairs to get to the front, I was struggling with the app and I saw something and I was like, oh, I need to get a bet down. By the time I walked down to put it in, the line had moved. They are on it. Definitely.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And it happened so fast. I was like trying to get down the stairs, get down there, and boom, they move their line very quickly. I would consider them one of the books that I would for MMA. Some of the others you can find the line is probably a little sharper towards the close, but. And if I'm allowed to give my opinion, one of the areas that is weakest is the women. They seem to miss, even the sharp books miss the women.
That doesn't surprise me, that they would, yeah.
And that was a fun time for me this summer until they started to figure it out a little bit. It hasn't been as great as it was at the early of summer. It was a wonderful place to be. But yeah.
So you recently went on a trip to Mexico, and you tell us that your experience in casinos in Mexico is different than what you get here in the United States. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Over the summer, I had a career, a job in Mexico City for about a month. And so down the street, they had a casino. And of course, I was going to go visit. It was an amazing experience. I will tell you that as someone, even with a little bit of language background, when you go into a casino and it's a different currency, it is challenging to be keeping up with that bankroll in the back of your mind. That was one of the biggest challenges I had when I went into the casino. The other thing I would tell you is you have to player's card. They do not let you play without a player's card. So you have to dox yourself. They make you give ID right at the start.
There are many countries where that is true. You have to show your passport just to walk in the door.
I did.
I would say that is maybe more common than not in foreign casinos, at least the ones I've been to.
The other thing that was a little bit intimidating about Mexico, and you all know that I'm from Oregon, different animal, right? So, is the huge police presence. Just to give you an example, I was in a grocery store and someone was shoplifting, and they did a full machine gun takedown.
Wow.
Large guns and 7 people in security. And I don't know what they were shoplifting, but it was a very dramatic situation. The guy was screaming, "Please don't take me in." And so with all of that in the back of my mind, when I went into the casino, I was incredibly cautious during my visits. But one thing else I can tell you about the casino is they gave a ton of rewards walking in the door from everything. So they did not, I played there for 2 days. They did not question anything in the sports book at all. And I would say the lines, and this was it was a little bit newer in my sports betting, my foray into this space. So I probably could have done more. I just wasn't ready and didn't know enough yet, but I would totally return. They don't seem to be sweating people in the sports book like they do over here in the US, because there probably isn't that community built up yet. At the blackjack table, I was a little bit cautious, very cautious, because again, guns, right? So I didn't play very much. I just kept a very solid basic strategy, and I tried to keep a running count, but not an expert in remembering the numbers. So
yeah, well, blackjack is not your game, right? Sports betting is your thing.
I did okay. I didn't lose. I walked out with a few bucks and just left it there. So yeah.
So also, I believe in Mexico there's some tax that they take if you win. So
yes, they do. I had to pay it, and that was a little disappointing. I didn't know. And again, the language barrier. So you're walking around and you're trying to figure out, you're doing a pesos conversion in your head, which is more challenging than you would think. And then you get up to the counter, you're exhausted after doing all that. So yeah, they do take some tax out at the very end.
Now, how does how does that work with sports betting? I mean, on every winning ticket, do you pay tax, or can you accumulate your sports bets and only if you're a net positive at the end? How does that work?
My experience it was with every winning ticket.
Wow.
But
could you use a winning ticket to make a new bet without paying the tax?
I believe that, and again, I want to be real cautious when I say this because it was about 8 months ago, and I hope I'm getting this right, so I wouldn't want to mislead. But my experience was when I cashed out at the end, and again, language barrier, there was one big pull out at the end. So I don't know, Richard, and I wouldn't want to say it wrong. I believe that at the end when I cashed everything out.
So you could, if you had a winning ticket, you could sort of leave it in your account when you say at the end.
I didn't necessarily set up an account. I just grabbed all my tickets and took them up to the front. So
all at one time. I see.
Yeah. So I don't really fully know. That would be a good question for one of the.
But you are experienced enough to recommend you shouldn't shoplift in Mexico.
No, you should not. You should be very, very cautious. Even things. I was at an ATM machine getting some money out, and they were getting ready to do a changeover. And I would say 5 guys with machine gun level, armory standing behind one guy. It's just intimidating. Very intimidating. So,
yeah. In Moscow, they would have armed guys at the entrance of the casino, and you had to go through a metal detector, and then sometimes they would wand you in addition.
Yeah.
So it's intimidating when you're in a casino taking their money and there are guys with guns there.
Yes, there was some guns, definitely some guns around all over in every space, including the grocery store.
So in sports betting or any kind of advantage gambling, the first step is finding your edge, but the second step is finding a way to actually take the money out. So how have you reached that point? And it's hard to do both as an individual. Have you reached that point where you have sort of found partners to help you get money down, or what's going on in that regard?
So I have a local casino and we have a really good relationship. And, oh, wow. So I have not had, it is getting a little dicey, but I just continue to come in every week with a smile and, wear things that would be not looking like I'm the smartest, and I'm very friendly to all of them. I know them by name. I always do things like stack my losing tickets up and go, oh gosh, oh no. They are not really tracking me that much, and I certainly don't bring my card every week. And that has been just glorious. I have had.
So you have not been backed off from a sports book yet?
Well, one of them in the other one, when I went in, it hasn't been formal, but every time I go in and I ask for a printout, they give me a hard time. And then one week I went in and they turned off the UFC odds while I was there on the screen.
You took that as a sign.
Don't let me. Well, and so our locals are all ran by women. So we're all kind of, me being who I am, I think they're trying to give me a little leeway, a little bit. But they want me to, you can't do the kiosk without a card. So I would go up to the counter and ask for a printout. And then when I started doing that, they were like, oh, the printouts are over there. Well, they're like 4 days old. And then I went in one day and they turned off the sign. And so they're just kind of trying to be gentle about it. I don't think they want to call the boss. Yeah, that I just kind of have not gone in for a few weeks.
So you haven't pushed it?
No, I don't want to get
And
limited. Only
have,
4.
have you tried betting offshore at all?
No, I have not. I probably have about 6 total outs right now. And the biggest one, you talked about getting money out. The one that I had the hardest one was with Colorado. I'm still trying to get it out. I went like 6 months ago, and they've asked for everything under the sun.
Oh, yeah.
Did a hard hit. I just did a real hard hit one weekend. And, again, remember I told you about that lucky time in the beginning?
Yeah.
That was just a really good weekend for me. So I think I'm about to get it back. I had to just give up everything. And part of the reason is because I don't live in Colorado. And so they were kind of hassling me for, do you live here? Were you legally betting here? And I had to show them that I was here and, stuff like that. So yeah, but I finally got it out. But yeah, it is hard.
At some point I would think, you're going to want to expand.
Yes.
And at that point, so now have you moved into other sports from MMA? Have you started to branch out in that way yet?
So yes, actually, the person that we discussed prior to the podcast, he and I are going to Las Vegas over Super Bowl weekend, and we're working on some things with props. So I'm very excited about that. We have been, so I have been using, and I think it's okay to talk about the tools. I'm using Unabated.
Well, they are a sponsor of the show, so I would think that if they don't mind an extra plug.
So that Unabated has been great for me. I actually, not only is the space incredibly welcoming, and I talked about just as a woman bettor, it's a little bit nerve-wracking to go in and just be the only one. And there has been just nothing but open arms and comfort and support. Captain Jack's videos are incredible for helping someone who is brand new to the space. A lot of times, like when we come into these podcasts and, you ask a guy, well, how did you come up in the industry? And they're like, oh, well, my dad took me to the track, or I was in college and I had a bunch of buddies that were, going to the casino every weekend and we watched sports. I don't have any of that. So for me, it's like, it's not like I can just go in and say, oh, hey, buddies, my buddies are all women. They're not into sports betting. My dad is not a gambler. So Unabated has been a great opportunity for me to meet like-minded individuals. A lot of them are incredibly professional. I've gotten half a dozen DMs saying, how can we help you? Even in the math space. And
wow.
Most recently, the support that I have gotten from the gambling community has been amazing. So I'm really glad that I signed up for that. I'm not a top-down bettor as much as I am an originator, but I believe that still I am getting a lot of good value from being part of that group. The other group that I've been working with is at Analytics.bet. And the knowledge that I have received from going to those classes has not only helped me as a gambler, but just helped me as an analyst, as a scholar. So I have really enjoyed being part of both of those communities, and so in many ways, that has been a great opportunity to also collaborate. And I am also considering, I haven't quite made the decision, but I'm thinking about maybe even going to Bet Bash. I just want to make sure that it works for me before I jump into the pool there too. So that's something I'm thinking about too, to meet and collaborate with people.
I'm just curious about that. What is the hesitation?
The food.
What?
The food. I'm a vegan.
But,
and,
but wait, well, I don't understand. Bet Bash isn't a feast. It's
well, and that, and also, okay. Truth be known, I'm just a little nervous about. Well, yeah, I guess that's probably part of it, and just fitting in the community and being taken seriously as a female bettor, because I know there's a lot of confusion in that space. In the woman gambling community, some of the women are doing it more as an influencer, and that's really not my path. I'm not interested in being an influencer. I'm more interested in being an actual advantage gambler. So,
well, also, if you're an originator, I mean, that's the key to the kingdom. I mean, there are very few originators, and if you actually have the goods, of course people are going to take you seriously,
well,
I'm surprised that you kind of haven't been approached already because there are plenty of guys who have lots of accounts that can get money down, but they don't originate, so.
I've just been taking it very slowly. One of the things that I would like to do before I really get into this is finish up my my degree path at Analytics.bet. I'm in my I'm trying to count 1, 2, 3, 4th class. And so once I get that done, I think that, and I get the master of sports betting, I feel like I will be very qualified to take on other accounts. And I expect to finish that somewhere in the middle of February. Hopefully. I have been a little slow to get it done because I do have a day job. Actually, I have 2 jobs. I have the one job and then I have the fun job. So
the fun job, you mean the sports betting
instructor?
Well, okay, then that would be number 3.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I want to talk more about Analytics.bet, but maybe we should do our commercials first and then come back and talk about that.
Okay.
The South Point has more than 10,000 games returning at least 99%. This is more such game than anyone else has. In December, between now and December 23rd, if you use your slot club points, virtually everything is half price, including rooms, meals, gift shop, New Year's Eve tickets, bowling, movies, etc. It's a good deal. It makes Michael's, which is one of the best restaurants in the city, although a bit pricey, if you're paying for it half price, it's an excellent bargain.
If you're serious about card counting, the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership is a great way to learn, train, network, and get the resources you need to succeed. We've had quite a few guests on Gambling with an Edge who exclusively trained and got their start through Blackjack Apprenticeship. Check out the website at blackjackapprenticeship.com. They have member forums, training software, and guides to help you learn. So that's blackjackapprenticeship.com, and you will find a link in the show notes.
Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on many of the games. Game of the week is Hot Roll Poker. This is a 10 coins per line game where 1 time in 6 you get a multiplier. The value of the multiplier is determined by a pair of virtual dice. If the dice rolls a 2 and a 5, for example, you receive 7x for the hand. The multiplier sometimes comes on the deal, sometimes on the draw, never both. There are no strategy variations for this game compared to the base game. The hot roll feature is even money, meaning that the dice rolls add no EV, but do add variance. And another name for variance, of course, is excitement.
If you're interested in getting an edge at sports betting, then unabated.com is a great resource for you. Founded by frequent Gambling with an Edge guests, Captain Jack and Rufus Peabody, unabated.com is designed for both new and experienced sports bettors. Their real-time odds screen, tools, and calculators take a lot of the guesswork out of trying to quantify your edge. There's also plenty of free education and instruction to help you along your journey to becoming a sharper sports bettor. You can currently take advantage of a 7-day free trial to decide if the premium membership at Unabated is right for you. And as Amber Gambling has just attested, she is a happy customer over there. So
Yeah.
So there's a couple of, we wanted to talk about Analytics.bet. We want to talk about the Real World Risk Institute, and we want to talk about Plus EV Analytics. So those are all kind of things that touch you somehow. So pick one and go for it.
Well, Plus EV Analytics and Analytics.bet kind of go together, right? Because he's one of the instructors there.
So he's getting ready to do a course in Bayesian sports betting. And I have to tell you my experience with the course. And again, I want to emphasize that my total experience in this is probably from for the sports betting part, not the mixed martial arts part, but the actual sports betting. I'm probably mid 2020 to about right now. So I still consider myself on a learning curve, and I'm one of these lifetime learners. I really like reading books. And just, and we can talk about that in the recommendations, because I have something for you too about a book that you recommended to me.
Good.
But yeah, so I met Plus EV Analytics, and without any knowledge about the sports part, and I even DM'd him. I'm like, I'm not sure. He's like, no, you'll be fine. I took Bayesian sports betting, and I found it to just be one of the most fascinating courses I've ever taken. And I've taken a lot of college courses, as you know. And I found it challenging. One of the things I had to do is pull up Wikipedia during the course, because they would make a sports betting reference or something in sports that I just didn't understand. And I would be looking it up on one side. The math itself is not, to me, I didn't find it to be really difficult. It's not like you're going out and doing calculus. If you took statistics in high school, I think you can get by. But I will say this, you need to be prepared to put in some work outside of just watching the class every night. At least I had to, and I don't know if that was just from my lack of experience or if that's just the nature of the course. But
I think that's the nature of gambling. You have to put in some
work.
I
put in I would say I probably put in addition to watching the video and attending the class, I probably put in at least 3 to 5 hours each week just studying. And I think a lot of that was just my nature of really wanting to understand what he was talking about and where, and the nature of not just being able to do the math, but actually what it meant. So I found it to be one of my most favorite courses that I had. And again, I was totally led here to all of this, a lot of this from Plus EV. Great guy. I can't say enough about him.
Yeah, he was a guest on the show. He was a good guest, actually. We should have him back.
Agreed.
So,
and these courses are like $1,000 or $2,000 a piece. And
yes.
Are they done by Zoom?
Yes.
Are they
So I, after taking Plus EV's course, I went on to take Dr. Crane and Dr. Myman's course, and in the applied sports betting. And again, it was the same thing. A lot of time and effort, but it's self-paced. So you have to be your own motivator. If you like what you're doing, then it's not that hard of a motivation. And again, they are very kind and easy on the math part. So you can go in and it's not like you're doing calculus. It's very understandable, and their delivery is incredibly professional. So I enjoyed taking that course. In fact, a lot of times if I am thinking of something in the casino, I run right back to the video, pull it up and rewatch it again and say, oh, is this something that I could do? So, and then the third, I took the foundations course, which really opened up my mind. That is just necessary. Even if you know everything there is, even if you know how to, the odds and all that, and, middling and, some of the things that come along with being a beginning sports bettor, I think it's still a good course to take, because there's probably holes somewhere in your knowledge. And I think that course is another great one. And then of course, the course that I'm in right now is a data management course. And I'm actually side taking it. I started it and put it on hold. And then I decided to take a Python course online just to strengthen that piece. So that's kind of where I'm at in my education. Once I finish that course, I've got one more, and then I'll have the Master of Sports Betting.
Now that's not an accredited master's, is it?
No.
Well, she already has a PhD.
I mean,
us.
Because I mean, Harry teaches at Rutgers, right?
That
So
was good
I mean,
enough
he is
for me.
yeah. Okay.
She does have a PhD, which she called a terminal degree, which makes never heard a PhD called that.
Yeah, I thought that phrase was interesting too.
Let me make sure I get this correct. I have a DBA. A DBA. Yes.
Doing business
or a database administrator. I have a doctor of business.
Okay.
Doctor of business administration. Different. It's a little different.
Okay.
Real World Risk Institute.
Yes.
What is that, and how does that relate to you?
Okay, so one of the things that is really cool, and I want to encourage all the women out there. A lot of times, if you go into something that it tends to be more of a male-driven industry, like sports betting, like Real World Risk Institute, you can apply for scholarships. And that's exactly what I did. I applied for a scholarship for the Real World Risk Institute. Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who I follow and fan quite a bit on Twitter, put out a post asking for women. They were trying to encourage women in that industry. And I went in, and a lot of women were like, oh, I don't know, this may not. And I was like, please, me, just pick me. I don't care. Hand up in the air. I'm ready to work. So he sent me an application, and I wrote up. One of the things I did was I made it kind of entertaining because he is he puts his Uber rating on there. So I told him, I was like, I'm an Uber driver. Here's my rating. I've driven for Uber before. I mean, I tried to do some fun things. I told him about my path to getting my education. And it was kind of a work through. It was a little bit of an economic struggle. And so he awarded me a scholarship, and I got in to his institute. And for 10 days, we get up in the morning and we just drill for most of the day. And in the afternoon, we get on and talk to each other about what we talked about. And it's all over Zoom, which he doesn't like, but that's okay. He would rather be in person. But it was probably one of the most eye-opening, game-changing experiences I've ever been through. So
I think a lot of our listeners follow Taleb and have read his books. Which I think we've recommended on the show a number of times. So that's very cool. But what happens in this class? Like, what is it that you're actually discussing?
So he brings in a lot of captains of industry, other college professors, people that have very high math and science knowledge, world leaders, you name it, the top of the game. And they will put on a course and going through a PowerPoint presentation or a video presentation, and he will just stop right in the middle of the talk and say, okay, let's challenge this. And he'll just start talking to them. And it's really interesting because he wants to, it's not just a delivery of knowledge, like, okay, I'm giving this to you, but it fosters a lot of understanding because he'll stop and say, well, why is that? And why do you think that? And he does. He's very challenging. And
so do the guests know that this is coming?
And they get on board, and he does challenge them a lot. It's interesting. It was an amazing experience. And I think in many places, I think in the educational community, that this should happen more, because when you do stuff like that, not only does it wake up the room, but it also debunks some things. And a lot of times I think he does it in a way where he's challenging them because he's trying to learn it himself. So he is very much in that camp of being a lifelong learner. And I love the way he does it. I love the way he ran his courses. He did hate the Zoom, but we all got past that towards the end. And of all the acumens and degrees and awards that I have received, one of the ones I'm most proud of is my certificate from Real World Risk Institute. And that's on Twitter if you're interested, hashtag RWRI.
Now, you don't live in Vegas, but you come here a lot.
Yes.
Have you developed any tricks for getting here inexpensively or quickly or anything like that?
Yes. You want to talk about some EV? So one of the things that I did when I was running my conference business, and again, this is a personal preference, so not all of your users may be onto this, but I made really good use of discount airlines. And so a lot of times, particularly Spirit Airlines, you could buy your ticket for $9. So a lot of times with my work schedule, I would just run out and buy like 4 or 5 tickets for $45 and then just pick a day. Whenever it came up, buy them in advance. You have to walk into the airport, stand in line. And another thing that I like to do is
wait, you can buy $9
you
tickets?
used to be able to. I think it's gone up in price a little bit and they don't advertise it anymore. But I can get a ticket back and forth to Vegas. And usually I just go in one day. Like I'll leave at like 6 or 7 in the morning and then take the 10 o'clock back out, not even stay the night. 3-hour flight. And if I go to the airport, sometimes I can still get them for, less than $50, almost cheaper than the Uber itself to get from the airport to the casino.
Wow.
And I use, and speaking of the Uber, I use the Vegas Transit. I ride the bus sometimes to go out to the downtown, area or the Strip. I'll just hop on the bus, put my earphones in, turn on Analytics.bet because I'm still trying to finish my degree. And just not be in too big of a hurry. But you can fly out and back direct flight, less than $50 if you don't want to go to the airport. If you go to the airport, I think you can still, I don't know if they've changed that policy that much since COVID, but you used to be able to go and get it at the airport for even less than what you would pay online. I just got lazy and tired, day job. So.
Yeah, I always thought if you pay at the last minute at the airport, it's quite a bit more expensive than ordering your tickets in advance.
That's a lot of some of the discounts will let you go and buy it cheaper. And I'm not sure if they're still doing that since COVID. In fact, I was getting ready to go try because I want to hike out a little bit. Another thing that you can do for discount airlines is sometimes I just miss my flight on purpose. And that has worked for me. Like if one day was cheaper than the other, I would be like, oh, I'm really sorry I missed my flight if I wanted to go out on the next day and stay an extra night. So for example, if I want to stay on Friday, if I want to stay over Friday night, I just, I miss my Thursday on purpose. They put you on standby. They're not really happy about it, but they'll let you go.
Yeah. Wow. I thought with Southwest, you would have to get a new ticket and the difference in, if there's a difference in price, you have to.
Southwest would do that. But the discounts, they're not going to.
Southwest used to be considered a discount airline.
On standby for a minute and you may be spending a lot of time in the airport, but if you don't have a ton to do, it's a little trick that it is we're all about the gamble.
But it's plus EV.
I have gotten away with it once or twice where I just wanted to stay through to Friday and I just took a gamble and I was like, maybe they'll let me on. It doesn't always work. I wouldn't pick the busiest weekend to do it. Definitely don't go during the race car. I can't remember what. South Point.
NASCAR.
Yeah, don't go during the South Point and do it. But, the South Point 400, I believe, was one of the busiest weekends that
I. And right now is the National Finals Rodeo is going on.
Weekend.
Yeah, New Year's might have a few customers here. Super Bowl might have a few customers.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it
Yeah.
on those weekends, but if you wanted to sneak one off, they'd probably let you on. You just have to be on a standby. The last little thing that I do for airlines is if I'm going out, like when I go to Atlantic City, for example, I might pick a real weird route, like going through Dallas or something like that. And then at one point I was picking, I actually went in and picked the ones that were the fullest flights. And I would go up and talk to the airline and say, hey, you could put me on a more direct for, since this flight is so full, I volunteer to go on a more direct flight. Or, I always try to pick one that's going to be full and then volunteer my way around. Again, you have to have some time and you are taking a risk. But I went out to Atlantic City, I think, for less than $100.
Wow.
And then the other, I use all the apps and all the discounts, and the one that the Las Vegas, I didn't know about the Las Vegas Advisor, but I found it the other day. A friend, one that I had discussed earlier, mentioned that, but I would take advantage of all of that now. That one was a come up. I did not know about Las Vegas Advisor, but now I do. So yeah, I use all those. There are some inexpensive hotels over on Fremont Street that are not gross. You have to look for them. But that is one place I splurge now. I am addicted to Circa. So I have to treat myself. One thing about Circa, and this was a little interesting midweek treat, and I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I did a midweek night and they upgraded me all the way to the top during the,
Wow.
I believe it was during the South Point 400 because they were really busy. So they put me up in a nicer room because I was only.
I look at what you said about no longer willing to stay in the gross places. I sort of look at that as a kind of a benchmark in any gambler's career. I remember the point where I was no longer willing to stay at Motel 6. I was like, I don't care how cheap it is. I'm not staying there anymore.
Motel 6 is nowhere near the gross ones.
Okay, I'll give you one that is not that rough. Down, and I'll just give it out because I don't think I'm going to do it anymore. But there is a hotel that has just been remodeled down by El Cortez called the Downtowner. And the rooms are very clean. During the winter, it is a good decision. In the summer, the air conditioner is a little bit challenging. But one thing I will tell you is they have a small swimming pool that nobody knows about. And nobody uses, and it's clean, and they don't charge you to sit there and lay out. And at one point, and I told you about the $50 flight tickets. At one point, I challenged myself to go back and forth to Vegas for less than $200, including bankroll, right when I was just starting. And of course, most of it wanting to go into bankroll. I flew up for like $25. The Downtowner room was $13, and the rest went into my food. And I just carried a bunch of bars. Vegan. I don't want to eat any of that food at all. And I gambled and turned it into a profit, and then came back and it was one of my most fun trips. So
Wow.
So there's ways. You just have to do some searches and not be afraid. So.
Very good, Amber. Amber Gamble. If people want to get in touch with you, is there a way to do it? Or should they just contact Richard and me and we'll forward?
You can follow me on Twitter at Amber Gambling. If you are interested in forming more of a partnership, I would ask you to send me a DM, and I can even add you. I keep a Twitter circle that gets a little more. I try to stay a little under the radar, but I share with people in my circle a little bit more about what I'm thinking, a little bit of my daily thoughts, a little bit of my other stuff that I'm doing in my life. But you're welcome to follow me on Twitter. I had my account on private for a while, but I'm getting a little bit out there. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. That's fine. Send me a DM.
Very good. The end of our show, we have a recommended section where the host and often the guest recommend something we think of as of interest. So Richard, do you have a recommended for our guest today?
Yeah, I'm going to recommend. I think I may have recommended this a couple of years ago, but my favorite Mexican restaurant in Las Vegas used to be a little hole in the wall called Chili Caliente. And I was there the other day, and they have expanded and made the restaurant bigger, changed up the menu. They've added a bar, but the food was just excellent still. So that is my recommended Chili Caliente. It's on the east side, maybe about 6 miles off the strip. So I'll put a link in the show notes to it. And but if you like Mexican food, it's a great place.
All right. My recommendation is a new Netflix movie of an old book called Lady Chatterley's Lover. This was D.H. Lawrence's last novel set during and after World War I. The upper-class Chatterleys marry before he, Clifford, is sent off to war, and he returns paralyzed from the waist down. Nonetheless, he moves his family home to the English countryside where he owns a coal mine. Eventually, Lady Chatterley, Connie, becomes disenchanted with the marriage, and a steamy relationship arises with the gamekeeper, Mellors. Affairs depicted at length, graphically, and tastefully. Now, I read this book more than 50 years ago, and at the time, my interest was in the pornographic descriptions, which I reread a number of times. I paid no attention to the coal strikes that were mentioned or the upper and lower class distinction. Those are the pages I skipped. But now in this movie, I'm kind of getting too old to get off on pornographic descriptions, and I would not call this one pornographic at all. If you're in for that experience, this movie isn't it. The star, Emma Corrin, is far more anorexic than anything in my imagination from the book, and it becomes more of a love story than a sex story. Glimpses of the upper class and lower class divide in 1920s England appear regularly and round out the story very nicely. So, Amber Gambling, do you have a recommended for us?
I have can I give you 2 books?
You may.
I want to recommend The Logic of Sports Betting by Ed Miller and Matthew Davidow. That was such a game changer in my gambling career. And then the second book I want to recommend is a favorite of mine. It's called The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. And if you are into philosophy and science, space, all those things, how knowledge is created, that is just an amazing book. I've read it several times. I'm actually listening to it on audiobook today on my way to Seattle to visit a betting friend. So yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Very good.
Not familiar with that one. And we will have links to all this in the show notes.
And The Logic of Sports Betting, of course, Matt and Ed have been guests on this show, and several of our guests recommended that book for good reason. All right. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, it used to be the first book that anybody would recommend for sports bettors was Sharp Sports Betting by Stanford Wong. But now I think that, that's the first book everyone should read.
I also read Sharper by PokerJoe, and that was another one that, again, just kind of the light bulb goes off. So, yeah.
Actually, I'm not familiar with this last one you mentioned.
Oh, it's a good one. I love that book. It's called Sharper Sports Betting, I believe, and it's by PokerJoe. And he's also on Twitter at PokerJoe, I believe. That was another great book. There's so many. I could recommend books.
Yeah.
Oh, and can I say something? Mr. Munchkin, I just want to thank you for your recommendation last year on Shogun. I DM'd you. You probably don't remember this because I DM'd you from my other account. And when you recommended Shogun, I was like, okay, I need more. And so, yeah, that was another great book. I enjoyed reading it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I love really long books. I mean, if the book is really good, I'm glad that it's really long because I want it to keep going on. And so Clavel wrote some really great, really long books.
Oh, yes. Well, I can attest. Your recommendation was amazing. Thank you.
Well, good.
All right. Thank you, Amber. This was fun. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.